Hello and welcome back to another episode of Myths, Magic, and Movies. And today we have a very familiar face here on the channel. We've got Chris Stonnell of Post Mortem Players, and today we are going to talk about his experience at the Carnival of Darkness festival that ran from October 15th to the 18th. Now, I was on the panel on the 17th. That episode is currently out there, so check it out. Chris was on the panel as well, and part of me kind of feels bad because his October was very busy, and I kind of cajoled the organizer Jonathan into having him on. So in order to assuage my guilt, Chris is going to regale me with tales of his time at the festival, and also hopefully make me feel a little bit better about having him stay an extra day. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We have a lot of content on the channel. I recently put out a video on Gothic elements in the Star Wars movies, so check that out. And we go over Latin superstitions with Jackie Obando Carter. That will air at the end of November. But without further ado, let's get started. So, Chris, you were invited to come to Carnival of Darkness for this year, and as we were chatting before recording, you already had a pretty packed schedule before. Now I guess the only good thing about all this was that you had ample time to plan. It wasn't like this was sprung on you, like a month before,
Yeah, there was plenty of time, but it was just it was us being such a small company. We were very honored to be invited by so many people to do so many different things in October, and and again, because we're new and we don't want to miss any opportunity to kind of get our name out there. I was more willing to say yes and just take on the burden than not. So we tried to make everything work as best as we could possibly get it to work. And I feel like everything was really, really successful. I think we did a really good job, especially considering our team is so small. So
when I spoke with Jonathan back in the springtime, I let him know that you ran a horror themed theater company in the Charlotte area. So I patched you two together and you guys got to talking. How much preparation did you guys do? Because the last time you and I spoke, you were getting ready to cast for the Crucible. So what did that conversation look like as you guys were chatting throughout the spring and summer to kind of get ready for your appearance at this festival?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing was us trying to determine what it was we were going to do and who actually could go. Because obviously with the Carnival of Darkness being on a Friday evening and, it being 4 hours plus away, that requires whoever was participating would have to take that Friday off from work. So there was already no guarantee on who could make it work. And also, a lot of my actors, October is a really, really busy time. Every theater company is doing something. And so it was also finding out, would anybody be available? As it is, we were doing our kind of long-awaited production of the Rocky Horror Show for the 50th anniversary of the film. So even us, we were building towards that, and pretty much all of our focus really was towards that. And so a lot of my actors were auditioning to be in that show. So there's just a lot of uncertainty on what we were going to do. I went through so many iterations, like, well, maybe. I have a friend who lives like 20 minutes north of Washington. And I was like, maybe we could do like a 2-man show. We could put something together. So it's just me going out there and then we can do something. We kind of went through multiple iterations. And then it actually was Jackie Obando Carter said, hey, why don't this could be an opportunity for us to go back to the roots of PMP and do a Grand Guignol show, which you haven't done since the first season. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea, because the length of those shows is exactly what Carnival of Darkness was looking for. Where I was looking at shows where I was gonna have to cut it down to like 20 minutes, and there's small casts, there's opportunities for effects and gore, and so that ended up working out. And we put the show together pretty quickly. We held our Rocky Horror audition at the end of July. That got placed. Then we had the event. We did another event the first 2 weekends in October at Charlotte's Off Broadway. So we needed to kind of figure out what we were doing from that. And then once that was said, it's like, okay, now who's available and who's able to come to Washington? And luckily, pretty much our first choices all said yes. We had an amazing cast, and we got to do one of my favorite Grand Guignol plays, The Final Kiss, which was actually one of the original choices. It was supposed to be one of the plays that kicked off PMP in our very first show ever, but I wasn't able to cast it back then. I just didn't have the right actors show up, so I had to replace it. And so it was very exciting now to get back to do that show, and it's showing our growth, just the talent of the actors we had at our disposal, we could do that show. And so literally it came together. They rehearsed for maybe about a month at most, to get ready to then do that show.
So you decided to go back to your roots with this Grand Guignol piece. What were you mentioned something earlier, and I do want to go back to that because when you're performing at any festival, obviously time is going to be a bit of a factor. Were there any stipulations or any ground rules that they kind of told you, hey, you got to keep it at a certain length of time in order for it to work, or what?
Yeah, well, because they had the whole event kind of timed out with, we're going to have these bands, they have this much time, we're going to have this comedy act, we're going to have this, and then we want the film to start around 10 o'clock or something. I can't remember what time it was, so you can have this kind of times out where you get about 25 minutes.
Okay.
So, and the plan was I wanted to do a short play, but I also wanted to give them a little taste of PMP. So I wanted to play my Mortimer Graves, Crypt Keeper ripoff character, and introduce it. Which again, I kind of say it kind of goes back to that Grand Guignol method of hot and cold showers, where they want to hit you with a little bit of comedy first to butter you up so they can hit you with something really scary. And so I kind of come out and do a little comedy routine as my alter ego character. And so I wanted to have a little bit of that in there to then introduce the play and then hit them with this, scary Grand Guignol.
So can you? So I wasn't there to witness it. Can you kind of describe for us what the piece that you guys performed on that Friday night?
So it's a piece called The Final Kiss. It premiered in 1912. So it was written and premiered the same year the Titanic sank. I use that in my opening bit, but it still works today.
Yeah.
The script, because the Grand Guignol was based in realism. So there weren't supernatural elements in their plays. It was all things that hypothetically could happen in real life. So the story is about a woman who's a model and her husband and her long-time boyfriend or whatever, but evidently he's broken up with her. She gets angry, and to take revenge, she has thrown acid into his face, which has disfigured him. And so the show kind of starts off, Grand Guignol plays are great because they always start off with like 5 pages of exposition, and everyone's dialogue is there for the purpose of like setting the scene. So he's in this halfway house where he's recovering, and it's the doctor and the nurse, as they're changing his bandages, are basically just spouting exposition, where they mentioned that it was his former lover that just did this to him, and how they can't believe he forgave her, the fact that he went onto the stand and defended her, and because of his testimony, she was given a light sentence, so she was set free, and they felt like, she deserved the death penalty. She deserved this to rot in prison. We don't understand how he did this, why he did this for her. He must still love her. And of course, the whole time that's happening, this is where you work in some of these little subtle effects. His back is to the audience the whole time, so they're just imagining how gruesome his face looks. And as they're taking off the bandages, the doctor and the nurse are reacting. And we did a bit where they're pulling off all of this, these chunks of dead skin off his face. And there's squirts of blood that come out, and pus that get on the nurse and the doctor on their white lab coats and aprons. And so it just makes the audience so uneasy. And then of course, they change his bandages. And then it's we'll come back and, see you in a month or something and see how you're doing. And they leave. And of course, then that's when the lover comes in, and you find out then that this whole thing has really been the spider and the fly, that he testified on her behalf because he didn't want anyone else to be able to punish her. He wanted to be the one to punish her. Mm-hmm. So he lures her there under this pretense of wanting to make up, and getting her close enough to him so he can spring by asking for a final kiss before they depart for the final time. And so it ends in a very horrific ending where he exacts the same revenge on her that she did on him. And of course, with her being a model, it's going to ruin her, And so it gave us a chance for some really great gnarly effects at the end, with her face melting off. And he then takes off the bandages at the end to show the audience the horror of what what she had did to him. So it's just one of those classic Gran Guignol plays.
So what was the reaction from the audience like? How did they, how were they digesting what was happening on stage in front of them?
They reacted to everything. We weren't quite sure. I mean, this is like we weren't, because this was like a horror event. They were all the Haunted Pamlico people were in costume. We're like, is this going to be like really tame for them? But the audience and everyone just really reacted. Even some of the haunt actors who were backstage with us were reacting. Just that you knew that what they were pulling off, these chunks of latex, that looked like they were just pulling skin off his face. They reacted to every one of them just with just agony and horror. The same thing at the end of the show, just, they reacted exactly as you wanted the audience to. It was funny because I had a friend of mine who's a director. Her husband was one of the actors in the show, so she sat out to watch, and she said, we'd had the audience so much on the edge of their seats that even when the lover makes her first entrance, someone jumped, and it was no jump scare. She just entered the stage, but evidently they were just so worried that something was going to happen that even just a simple character entrance, got them to jump. So for us, it was great because we got that. We weren't sure how it was going to go over. We're like, we're doing a 113-year-old French play. And in my mind it translates well and it's great, but you don't know that till you get it in front of an audience.
So did you get any immediate feedback after the show? Were people coming up to you and just saying that was like the scariest shit I've ever seen, or what were they telling you?
So the other actors who are in the dressing room right next to us, the Haunted Pamlico actors, they came in, they wanted photos with us, and we got a lot of great feedback from them about how great the show was, and just they were asking about the effects and how we did this or how we did that. I had a couple friends in the audience, so I got out of my makeup very quickly and tried to go around to the back to kind of sneak in. And as I was walking in, it was the event was letting out, and so I heard some people talking about, oh my gosh, that play was so, was so fabulous. It was just, and I heard them talking about our performance as I was kind of walking through the audience. Of course, none of them, had any, realized who I was as I was going through there, because I was was in my makeup that I'd been wearing.
Right.
So I kind of here without even, them knowing who was in earshot.
Well, another thing I was going to say too, because this is the first time you guys are performing in Eastern North Carolina too, right? Because for the most part, you guys are pretty much just I wouldn't say relegated, but you guys are pretty much confined to like the Mecklenburg, Davidson, Cabarrus County area, really. So what was it like performing? I guess doing an away game, to use a sports metaphor, instead of being on home turf.
Yeah, it was our first time on the road. It was it was our first kind of tour, and that was really exciting. It was little things, like we went there and there was like a little sandwich board outside the theater that listed everything, and it's like there was our name on there. So it's cool seeing our name there. Just seeing us in the marketing and things like that was really cool. And it was it was fun just bringing it to that part of the state. A lot of my family is from, grew up, my mom's side of the family is from over there. So it was cool to kind of go over there. And one of my best friends, who I know I've mentioned before, lives out there in Martin County, just north of Washington, had never been able to see a PMP show before. So even the fact that they were able to come and see us perform, I'd made jokes that, you couldn't see it here, so I made sure to bring PMP to you. So just having them to have the opportunity to see the show was really meaningful. So we really enjoyed it, and it's part of my future plan. I would love us to do something like that. As we continue to grow. I have dreams of writing like partnering with North Carolina Humanities Council or getting some grants to write some sort of touring show that focuses on North Carolina ghost stories and legends, which connects right to the social studies curriculum in the state, and do some kind of program that could tour schools and do that. And so it was kind of cool to show that there would be an audience. So So
Well,
it was kind of a cool first step for something like that.
Well, I was going to say because Jonathan, when I interviewed him previously, he told me that that a lot of the project that they work on deals with North Carolina folklore.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got, and then while I was there on the second day, I got to go. I got to participate in their kind of the ghost tour, the ghost walk they were doing, and it was cool because I heard a lot of new ghost stories that were more like specific to Washington in that area. And then, of course, he also told one of my favorite North Carolina ghost stories, the story of Theodosia Burr Alston, who, of course, her profile is raised considerably, due to being the daughter of Aaron Burr and mentioned in Hamilton. But the fact that her ghost, haunts the coast of North Carolina, it was cool hearing that story again. Because the story, that's one I definitely want to include in whatever we write.
So you do the performance at Carnival of Darkness. You guys are killing it. What has the conversation been like between you and Jonathan since then? Do you think this is something that's going to be a regular feature going forward? Because you did mention how people were giving the festival a lot of praise, saying that this was probably like the best Carnival of Darkness in years.
Yeah. So I mean, immediately after it's over, the cast, we kind of hung out for a little bit afterwards, and immediately they were just talking about how much they loved the experience, how much they would love to come back if we were ever invited again. The next day I talked to Jonathan a little bit before the panel, and he kind of mentioned, that maybe if we were just coming back, that could work out. Then he emailed me, a few days after the festival, just sharing some of the comments. They had made a post on Facebook that said that they felt it was the best Carnival of Darkness ever. And then mentioned to us that they got comments that our performance was astonishing, which I immediately shared that quote with all the actors. And that, the door would be open if we wanted to come back. And I said, of course we would like to come back. And so we are kind of putting that into our planning for next year already ahead of time, to make that kind of a core part of what we do in October. So that go ahead and get all that stuff as in the hopper ahead of time.
So not to give too much away, but do you already have something brewing in the back of your mind that you think, hey, maybe this might be something we might put on for 2026? Because I know you mentioned that you want to start doing projects that focus more on North Carolina lore. So do you think you might continue with the Grand Guignol kind of theme, or do you think you want to kind of mix things up with each appearance going forward?
So next fall, that will be PMP, the beginning of PMP's 5th season. And I tried to rotate a bit. We did, as I mentioned, we did the Rocky Horror Show this October, which was an expensive musical. And so I try to kind of spread things out, financially. And so next fall, I think, because once again, no one really around here got to see that show. We did it in Washington. We did invited dress the night before we left at the Old Courthouse Theater, but it was just up in the dance hall. We weren't on stage. We didn't have stage lighting or anything. We went and performed it on I think whatever the Saturday was, October 25th or whatever, I think. We performed it that evening at the Strange Charlotte Film Fringe Festival. But that was new, so I don't know how big the audience was there. So the majority of our audience hasn't seen it. So, we've already been talking about, hey, the actors in this show, put it on your calendar for next year. And maybe we're toying with kind of the idea of maybe going back and doing, a real evening of Grand Guignol plays. And, and then bringing that one back so people here can see it, but then also doing several others, one of them being what we would then take to Washington. So because, we did that, that's what we did for our very first ever show, but we've come a long way since that one from, and on all facets, we've come a long way, and it'd be fun to now that we, have learned a lot more how to do the effects and things, really, really do that again. And I think that would be a fun October show.
Yeah.
It would give us some short plays that we could take to some of these other events, that are going on. Like if we decide to go back to Charlotte's Off Broadway again, they want to have us in October. We can we could do a Grand Guignol show there. We could do one in Washington, and then we have our evening. So we're not like having to have 3 or 4 different casts, doing things. So
you guys go to Washington and you perform this Grand Guignol, and you guys are receiving adulations and praise for your performances. What sort of lessons have you learned from doing your first tour, as it were, in Washington, North Carolina? Like, what kind of lessons or mistakes, or I guess benefits did you glean from doing Carnival of Darkness that you feel maybe when we start putting more and more locations and festivals on our schedule, this will be the routine going forward?
I mean, from the positive thing, we learned that we could do it. Because we were able to go up there in one day, build in, bring our stuff in, do a show, it'd be successful. And, so, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I think, we'll need to kind of figure out transportation because, it's probably not best every time to have everyone driving separately. And we were just, basically squeezing things into people's cars. And hoping we're fortunate. One of our actors had a truck and a camper, and so we could bring set pieces with us. But I think it's one of those things we'll need to kind of think ahead for, especially if we're doing shows that are more than just one set. So I think is planning for those things ahead. But I mean, I think we did a really good job for the first time, and we, some things happened just out of necessity. Jackie was unable to travel with us. So we brought on a stage manager who could go, because I felt like I needed to have someone who wasn't acting to be there to help with, coordinating with their tech staff to make sure everything happened. To call the show because because I'm going out first, and so performing my shtick, and then was coming off stage and in makeup. I'm like, there's not time for me to go run up to a booth or try to do anything. So it's helpful to have that other person, which I think we learned is always important as well for trying to do anything like this, is to have at least have one of those people around. And she was able to help with makeup beforehand and able to help with setting the effects, which was great because it took that responsibility off the actor. So they had to really focus on was their performance.
Now, one thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about that, because obviously the biggest issue is going to be logistics. Whenever you're doing these tours, have there been any conversations or any meetings about maybe having some of the set pieces kind of ready over there, so when you guys get there, it kind of cuts down on the amount of time you guys have to spend setting everything up? Or do you feel more comfortable just bringing your own stuff and then taking it with you once it's done?
I mean, I think you always want to have your own, just because then you're comfortable with practicing with it. As I mentioned, I have my friend who lives out there. We had talked initially about maybe borrowing things from the theater company that he's a part of out there, but it was one of those where you don't really know how it's going to work until you see it. And of course we're doing this Victorian era show, so it was just some of the things we needed. We wanted them to look a certain way, and it was easier that way. I think there's opportunity if we're going places where there are other theater companies we could partner with. We say, hey, we need XYZ, could we borrow it? Or things like that. I think that's always an option. I think we'll just the good thing about the Grand Guignol shows, for the most part, they can be done relatively minimalistically. So I think it would just be planning that ahead. It would never be a problem with Carnival of Darkness because we're literally just doing one show, but or one sketch. If we were going somewhere where, say, we were doing the Ghost Story show, which maybe would be an hour-long performance or something, that would have multiple stories and multiple scenes, and that would get a little bit difficult. Where, I mean, that show would be an original work we would write, so it'd probably be written in a way to be minimal. Would there be minimal set pieces or things that could be reused? In this scene, this thing is a table, in this scene, it's a train, or by using blocks or something like that. There's ways you could get more usage out of certain items, but I think that just has to go into your planning. When you're planning these things, and the other is it comes down to light and sound.
Yeah.
where I think, Carnival of Darkness would have been great if we could have come a day early and gone through some things. Because as it was, had to leave early, drive out there and get checked into the hotel and then go try to do a tech. So it all works great, but maybe if we're doing something a little more formal, touring kind of thing, it would be, hey, let's get up to just make sure we have all that so our light cues and things can work.
So what sort of connections have you made? When you guys were doing Carnival of Darkness, did you guys run into any other theater companies or filmmakers who are interested in what you guys were doing, or what?
I had some good conversations with people. There are a couple people who were, I met someone there who was local to Charlotte, who was familiar with us from here, and mentioned how they were looking forward to coming to see Rocky Horror. But there are a lot of them are just really interested, and it was like, hey, if we're ever in that area, we want to come check you out, and we hope you guys come back.
Mm-hmm.
So it could almost be like a little satellite location, that's down the line, but like a lot of the big orchestras in the country, they'll do like a summer residency somewhere. Like the Cleveland Orchestra used to go to Florida every summer and have a residency there. So or you would go to one of the it's sort of like the Boston Pops goes up to, or Boston Orchestra goes up to Tanglewood, and this kind of summer homes. There could be an opportunity where maybe we, at some point we go and there's one production a year we do at our satellite location, which could be, maybe that's Washington.
That'd be pretty cool, because I know that was something that you talked about in previous episodes. So Friday comes and goes. You guys, put on this performance. You stuck around the following day to take part in the film festival panel, of which I was part. Can you what was it like? Did you feel like you were kind of underprepared, or did you feel like, oh, anything goes? I mean, as long as we're talking about horror films, I'm pretty good with what's going on here. What can you talk to me about that experience?
It was enjoyable. It was one of those when you're kind of you kind of don't know how it's going to go till you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those things where I had 5,000 other things I either forgot to say or didn't think about till it was over. I'm like, oh, I wish I had said that, and with the questions, I wasn't 100% sure everyone else was going to answer them. So not even, so like, am I even interpreting some of these in the same way as other people are interpreting them? So, but that's typically how it is. So it was a lot of fun. I think the audience seemed to be receptive. We had some good questions. I love the space, and it was fun to be a part of it.
You certainly did give me a lot to think about, especially when you were talking about the final girl, because because I didn't even think about how Luke Skywalker could sort of be interpreted as an iteration of the final girl. So I was like, I might take that for my next video.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was one of those that I had kind of had that, because I was just trying to think of like, horror, because we were talking about, what had been taken from horror into other genres.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to think, well, what are some of the some big horror tropes that I could see across? And then that obviously popped into my head, and I wish I'd had more time to really think about it and come up with some more examples of that in other films. But really the Luke Skywalker one came to my mind just because when you were talking about, the episode 4, in the clips, I was like, oh wait, this is it right here. So because that didn't even dawn on me before the panel. So, but yeah, that was one of those exciting kind of aha moments I had. It's like, oh, that's it. I think there might be some meat on the bone of this option.
Yeah, I'm with you, because I felt like there were just so many things that I wish I could have said differently. But I was like, you know what, I'm okay with it, because I got most of what I want to say out there. Did you get a chance to talk to Todd as well? Because I know Todd was on the panel.
Yeah, you. A little bit beforehand. And of course, we kind of bantered a little bit since we were the two live panelists.
Live ones, yeah.
flesh and blood panelists there, we talked a little bit, and we're able to kind of, um, go off what each other was saying.
Yeah, yeah. And here I am. I'm just like stuck on a computer screen, just talking.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, and
so
when we were at, because you were like parallel with us, so we couldn't see you, so we never were totally sure.
yeah, it's like, is the internet still working over there or what? But one other thing I want to ask you too, because you mentioned before we started recording that a lot of the cast members of Carnival of Darkness, they kind of had to go back that day. So unfortunately, they weren't able to stick around for the panel. Do you think there was anybody in that cast who probably would have been interested in taking part of the panel, like actually being like members who kind of got to offer their own 2 cents on the horror genre?
I mean, there's a couple who probably could have. My friend who lives a little bit away, he's one I would love to have had on the panel.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely very knowledgeable, and he can talk about some, way more obscure horror films than I can talk about. But depending on where the panel went, say if we were talking some about effects or something, it would be good. Like, it would have been cool if Jackie had been able to go with us to have that perspective on things. Maybe not specific horror films, because Jackie really is a self-professed not really a fan of horror films.
Yeah,
but she loves doing the effects. So that could even, that would be an interesting topic to kind of share some of those kind of behind the scenes. How do we do these things?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the special effects we did or practical effects that they're doing in some of those films, or especially that come from the Grand tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was this the first panel you ever took part in, or have there been other panels previously?
Let me try to think. I mean, other than sometimes when you've done some of the podcasts that are with multiple panelists,
Yeah.
we've discussed topics. I mean, that's probably the closest. I'm trying to think I'm sure I have at some point for theater or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done some things where I've lectured and done Q&A afterward, which is kind of very similar. I did do a couple classes at Mad Monster Party this back in August, and I did do some Q&A after that, which gave me an opportunity to talk about some things.
Gotcha. So real quickly, can you talk about any other projects or collaborations that you've been working on since Carnival of Darkness? I know you guys are getting ready to do Krampus for Christmas Spirits this year.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big thing now. I mean, we just finished up the most successful show in PMP history, which was our Rocky Horror show, where I feel bad for anyone who missed it, because it was a truly remarkable performance. We transformed the Black Box Theater at OCT, and it was just top to bottom, just a stellar experience. And I think so many people came in who these Rocky Horror Picture Show pros, and had never seen the stage version. I think they came away like, wow, this was really impressive. So it was a ton of fun. So now we are turning our attention to Krampus, which is an original work. So Kimberly Saunders, who has been volunteering with PMP since our second season. She's also a screenwriter and a playwright. A huge fan of horror. So about a year ago, we started chatting because OCT had, for it's OCT's 50th anniversary this year. And so for December, they wanted to bring back A Christmas Carol, which they had done years before successfully. And I felt kind of bad that if they were doing A Christmas Carol, I didn't want to do a ghost story this year, even though that's sort of what we've been doing. And they also were very kind to us to allow us to, because in the past we've had that, our Christmas Spirits has been like one weekend, and it's the weekend closest to Christmas. So a lot of people are out of town or shopping or whatever. And so we've never had really great audiences for that one. And so, they were gracious enough to allow us to open our show the weekend that their production closes. So theirs will start at 7:30. Ours will start at 8. They'll be on the main stage. We'll be in the black box. So again, I even more so didn't want to say, hey, come see our ghost story, not their ghost story on the same night.
Right.
So we want to do something different. And so obviously the Krampus legend is, obviously in the last decade or so has just risen in popularity here in the States. And just kind of has that kind of cool hook to it. So I talked to Kimberly about, writing a Krampus themed show, like a real Christmas horror, with some blood and guts and gore and plenty of, holiday retribution for those who are naughty. And so the story is more than just Krampus. We've included a couple other of the more sinister Christmas denizens. So there's Krampus. We also have a character called Frau Perkta, who's also kind of a Austrian German folklore character. Much like Krampus punishes those who are naughty during the year, but her shtick is she slits open your belly with a sewing needle and stuffs you with straw.
Wow.
So she's one of them. We've got a character called the Yule Cat, which is essentially this oversized cat that punishes you if you don't get new clothes for Christmas.
Okay.
And so don't wear anything old on Christmas Day, or the Yule Cat comes for you. And then there's a group of these little impish creatures, very similar to from Gremlins from the 80s. They're called the Kalikanzaros. They're kind of a Greek group. They appear during the 12 days of Christmas, just to kind of basically just wreak havoc on the here on the earth, where at the end of the 12 days they're banished back down to the center of the earth, where they toil the other 11 and a half months of the year.
Right.
So those are our creatures, and they're going to be basically running rampant at a pharmaceutical company's holiday party.
You guys, it's going to be it sounds like it's very involved project for December.
It is. Yeah, it's, we're super excited about it. And the hope is that, I just want to be this campy, gory, let's make it like a almost like a slasher horror film on stage.
Right.
Set at Christmas. So the hope is it'll kind of be this almost like kind of cult show that we can bring back periodically, in years we need a break from ghost stories.
Well, another thing that I want to ask you too, because a while back you mentioned how when PMP started, you guys were basically doing adaptations, or you were just taking licensed material and kind of adapting it for your production. Are you starting to see a transition where you guys are moving away from adapting established works to doing original material, or are you always going to have a repertoire where you're including some well-known IP in the lineup?
For me, my delineation is not so much original versus existing. It's more something that's an existing play that you're paying for to get the royalties, you to do the play as is, or it's you're creating a play that hasn't existed before. Either it's a totally an original concept, or you're adapting an existing work. And I want to have some of those original things. We got away from it a little bit. The first year in PMP, our first two shows were all originals. We did, other than one sketch, we did a pre-existing Grinding Yule play, but the other two shows that we did in that very first evening were original. And original adaptations, and then Christmas Spirits were original adaptations of 4 Victorian ghost stories. I would like to get back to some of that. We kind of got, it was just sort of the excitement of that we were here and people were interested in us, and it's like, hey, let's do this and let's do this and let's do this. Where I don't want it to get lost that part of it was bringing some of these works that people don't know to the stage, and or it's continuing the horror tradition and having new works of horror that can be added to the canon. So something like Krampus, but I have lots of ideas of ghost stories that I'd love to adapt. So I do want to get back to that. The North Carolina Ghost Story Project would be something that would be an original work, based on state legends and lore. So my hope is maybe to have something original or adapted every year, and then a couple existing works but a lot of it just depends on what's available, what we've already done, and how it kind of fits in with the season. But I can say, without giving anything away, I am really, really. I mean, I'm super excited for this season, but I'm really getting excited for season 5 because I can't announce it yet, but I've got 2 like major blockbuster announcements coming for season 5.
I'm really excited to for the news on that, and I'm also really excited that you and Jonathan have developed this sort of relationship where you guys can sort of begin to kind of work together to create a Carnival of Darkness where it's not just about horror films or it's just about this or that. It's you're adding dimensions to it.
Right.
Have you chatted with Jonathan about maybe collaborating on any future projects besides performing at Carnival of Darkness? Or
no, not yet. I mean, we're as I mentioned, we're still small, so I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth yet. I mean, we're trying to take small steps. We're trying to get like maybe a few education type classes off the ground this year.
Okay.
I mean, for us, it's just looking at other streams of, I hate to look at it from an income standpoint, more so an artistic standpoint, but some of it is finding ways that we can, bring in some additional income so that we have more flexibility to do some of these other cool things. So like this past summer, we partnered with Little Courthouse Theater and we partnered with Davidson Community Players to offer our first 2 Grand Guignol summer camps. And it was a very successful test run. So we're hoping to do more of those. We're hoping maybe to start going into to schools to teach about the Grand Guignol tradition or to teach about horror special effects. So, but it's, for me with just free time being at a premium, I have to get our shows off the ground first. So I've really been neglecting that. The hope is, we at least get a few of those done this year and then continue to build that, because then that could bring in some additional income that could go towards giving us the flexibility to do other things. And then working, and then you get to the point where we could write a grant to hire a playwright to work with me to develop the North Carolina touring thing. Or, again, even the touring the Grand Guignol thing could be something we could do. I mean, it would just be getting to the point where we're touring it sometime other than October.
Right. Kind of maybe do like a summer tour or something like that,
So, I mean, I think writing the Ghost Tour show would be cool, figuring out, the market for that. And would it be a thing that we would go to schools? Would schools be interested because it does, it would connect with the curriculum. So it's writing a story that would be accessible, to that age group. So there's opportunities there, or partnering with other theater companies. Like we had this show, maybe we go and we can work with other companies and bring one of these shows for a weekend for their clientele, so that we can sort of be seen more as a regional company than as a Concord. So, strictly Concord company, which is part of the reason we were so eager to partner with Charlotte's Off Broadway, because you want to take every opportunity to be in Charlotte to kind of say, hey, this is still our turf. We just, it's sort of like in my Mortimer character, I kind of made the joke that, I'd heard this rumor that because we perform up in Concord, none of you guys from Charlotte can come up to see us. But I was like, but if I can come back from the dead, you guys can make it up I-85, a couple times a year.
Yeah.
So that I feel like there's a greater chance of us getting them to make that drive to see us, than for us being able to afford space in Charlotte. So, and we're seeing more and more of that. More and more people are making an effort to come see PMP because we do good works and because they don't want to miss it. So that again, it kind of puts pressure on us. Last year I felt that pressure, and I think it impacted a little bit. Last year was probably the most difficult year of any PMP year. And I think it was sort of that, oh crap, we won Theater Company of the Year. And now people, where are expectations going to go? And, I realized I didn't have to, put those really high expectations and stress myself out over them.
Well, I mean, ever since you won that award, obviously that kind of changes, expectations a little bit. I mean, you mentioned too that Jonathan, kind of marketed you guys as a professional theater company. So it kind of goes with the territory,
It does. But I think in a way we kind of strayed a little bit from from the foundation we were found when what I founded us on,
Mhm.
and it was continuing the Grand Guignol tradition, continuing the tradition of telling ghost stories, and then third presenting works existing works of horror. And I think we jumped a little bit saying, hey, well, we're so good, let's do this show and this show and this show, and let's do this really
Right.
big Crucible, which was an amazing show. But I thought that we had like jumped ahead 2 steps in the process
Right.
when I needed to stay the course of where we were and not jump ahead. It was like all of a sudden, because we got this award, audiences are falling over themselves to see us. There was no like attendance bump. So it was more, doing good shows that people want to see are more important than, what awards you're given.
Yeah, exactly. Because you definitely do need to stay true to your roots on that. But Chris, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. And I just want to thank everybody for taking time to watch us. If you're enjoying the content, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We have a lot of shows on the channel, everything from the Movie Pope to the Robot to Myth, Magic, and Movies. So as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode.